Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another segment of Building Shatterproof Families. We do this through our Real Talk Family Life station. And the topic for tonight is Men Under the Microscope. Men Under the Microscope. And we look forward to hearing from you guys in the audience, especially you men in the audience. So before we get started, I want to remind you that in order to participate, there are several options. You can use any of the emojis that are on your Zoom. If you want to raise your hand or give us a hand clap or what have you, you can do that. If you raise your hand, we will recognize you and have you open your mic so you can ask your questions or make your comments. You may also put your questions or comments in the chat. We will try to monitor those as closely as we can in order to address your questions or at least recognize your comments. We have a wonderful panel here this evening. We have Pastor Griffith, Pastor Henry, and Sister Bola, because we feel that it's often necessary to have a female perspective, or at least the opposite genders perspective, when we're talking about a gendered issue. And Men Under the Microscope is certainly a gendered issue. So please feel free to participate. Those of you who are on YouTube, please post your questions in the chat. We will certainly monitor that as well and try to address them as we go through the various sections of our conversation this evening. So I'm going to invite the panelists to introduce themselves briefly so that you, again, especially those who don't recognize the faces and the names, can get to know who's on the panel, and then we will proceed with our conversation on Men Under the Microscope. So this is a good time while they're introducing themselves. It's a good time for you to send out a WhatsApp notice, share it on the various social mediums that you use, and call someone, whatever you do to find your friends and family members and get them connected with us this evening so they can be part of this conversation. So, Ms. Bola, would you please introduce yourself for us?
Well, good night, everyone. I am Clara Bola. I am an educator, counselor. I am a parent, mother, a widower, and I now work with the church organization as a director for family life and education. So I have had about 40 years of experience in the teaching fraternity / counseling. And I am very happy to be a part of this prestigious group. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you, Ms. Bola. Pastor Griffith.
Hello, good evening. Me, I'm regular, always here, almost every time you're here. Pastor, a couple of years, I'm Christian, well over 40 years. A man, don't know how you wait, as in how much, but a male who believes that men have a critical role to play in life and who is doing everything within me to see that my men are doing well, responsible, and moving on. That's me.
Thank you, Pastor Griffith. Pastor Henry. Please unmute.
Got to start all over. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be back with you this evening. God is good. For those who are joining with us for the first time, I am Anthony Henry. Have been pastoring for a number of years. I can't remember exactly. I know I graduated from Bible school sometime around 1975. Please don't ask me my age. The Lord renews my youth every day, and so that you will never be able to figure out that I'm looking, because I'm not going to get old. So we look forward to a great evening this evening. And the Lord bless you. Let's have fun on this program. It's about the men. Let's have fun.
Wonderful, wonderful. And just so you know, this is not male bashing, and this is not us comparing men to women every time we talk. We just want to look at men, get a clearer or a more finite look at men and how they do certain things. And we have key topics to address, as well as finally look at what God designed a man to be.
Let's have fun.
And that's kind of how we'll end it, because I think it's a precursor to another segment. Wonderful. And just so you know, this is not male bashing. But the key is for us to look at men so we can get a clearer understanding of the male species in our society. All right, so we are going to start our conversation today looking at communication. And I know several of you have read the book by Mr. Gray on men are from Mars, women are from Venus, or maybe the opposite. It's been a long time since I read that book. And he's written several books about that, looking at the differences between men and women. And communication has always been one of the areas of concern, as well as one of the areas of discussion, because it is clear that males communicate differently than females. So, Ms. Bowler, men tend to use a report style of communicating. By that I mean, they talk about facts and data and strategies for solving problems, things like that. And in so doing, they tend to avoid what I consider to be more personal, social, emotional kinds of anecdotes that would give us a better look into how they feel about things. They tend to skirt around those issues. Now, I will say that we're not saying every man does, because there are some men who are very much in tune with their feelings and feel very comfortable sharing their emotions. But in general, men tend to avoid anything that has to do with rapport building when they're communicating. What can you say about that, Ms. Bowler?
Okay. Well, there is a biological reason why men behave that way. Now, we have two hemispheres in our brain. We have the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. Now, I'm not a medical person, but because you do psychology and you have to study the human person, then you get a good perspective of what is happening in there. So we are told that your right side is controlled by your left brain, and your right brain controls the left side. So we see that men use more of the left side of their brain. So most men are left brain. So they use the right side, yes, but the concentration is really on the left side of the brain. And that left side of the brain is what makes them communicate the way that they do. In other words, they do not like the long, flowery stories. They prefer to just get the facts. So I had to go to St. George's, which is the capital of Grenada, to do something for my husband. Now, I would like to tell him what happened from the time I left home until I got through with what he sent me to do. But he will keep interjecting. So you got through with whatever it is? And I would be getting a little annoyed that he's not interested in, how I got in, what I had to say, and so on and so forth. But he was just more interested in what happened with what he asked me to do. So when we understand men from that perspective, we know that they're not really interested in all the flowery details. They are just more interested in the plain truth, the facts, the logics, and so on, right? And that is because biologically, they use more of the left side of the brain. And that's why maybe we came up with things like what men will do and what ladies would do. So men are more mechanical, they're more logical, they're more spatial, they use their hands a lot, you know, and they figure out things quicker than ladies do. That's because of that left brain that they spend more time has developed. And I think the good Lord has made it that way. That if, I mean, we have some ladies who are very much left brain too, and we see them operating in positions of leadership and so on and so forth. But men, generally speaking, and we have men who are on the other side, the right brain, they're very soft, we say, they're nicely spoken, they're very gentle, they're not as aggressive, you know, they're not rough. So we have that. But generally speaking, men fall on that left side of the brain. So their communication will be facts, logics, and so on, whereas ladies tend to give more details. But it balances off nicely. While one looking for the facts, the other one is smoothing it over, right? So there's no comparison. Men will be men and ladies will be ladies, right? Another thing I would like to mention is that men process information differently. So while you are speaking, the man is pulling out what he believes to be important. Is it, as we would say, does it make sense? Because ladies sometimes do a lot of talking and they really don't make sense. Sorry, ladies. But men, when they tell you something, they actually give you what the information really is. Okay? So the men's brain are involved in more concentrating on the task that they are doing. That's why they do one thing at a time, and that's done well. They are not very good at multitasking. Okay, I remember when I had children small, and forgive me for using my own example, and I came around the bend, I would notice them doing some mischief while daddy is sitting right there doing his work and he hasn't seen anything because he's concentrating on his task and he doesn't, you know, have that multifaceted part of him that wants him to do more than one thing. But it's just that's the way men are made. So ladies have to understand that men's way of communicating is different. They don't look at your facial expression to feel sorry for you. You know, ladies watch you and think, well, you know, men, they don't have time for that. They ask you what's wrong, and if you can't say what's wrong, they move on to the next topic. So when they ask you a question, you need to answer. Answer promptly. I have a headache. And not to say, you don't see I'm feeling well. No, they can't see that. They could hear, I am not feeling well. I have a headache. I need to rest. I need, you know. So that's something that we have to take consideration when we are dealing with men. We have to be direct. If you want something, you ask for it. They ask you, what do you want? You don't spend the whole time trying to figure out what you want because they will pass on to the next item on the agenda. They ask you what you want, you say what you want. What's wrong, you say what's wrong. And then another way that they communicate, let me say the last thing and then give the men a chance to speak. Okay, because they focus mainly on one thing, if he's doing something and you're trying to speak to him, he doesn't hear what you say. So generally, he will come back and say, what did you say? So you know very well he didn't hear what you say. That's because his attention was on something else. So when you have to speak with the man, you have to get all of his attention. If he's watching sports and you're coming and telling him something, he won't hear that. His thing is on the sports that he's looking at. So you have to wait. As we say, we have to look for the opportune time when you can communicate what it is you want to, because that's just how men are made biologically and psychologically. Thank you.
Wow, that's why when I read that men don't pay attention as well as women, that makes a lot of sense, because from what you're saying, they really don't pay attention to nonverbal cues, so that your face being contorted or your body being slumped or whatever, they don't catch that, as well as they don't pay much attention to context clues. So you are asking them to guess at what you're thinking or doing is foreign to them, because that's not how they made it. But here's my question. Maybe the men could answer this. Since men communicate the way Ms. Bola just explained, which goes along with what the research says on report style, why do they then try to dominate a conversation or engage in mansplaining? Let me explain what mansplaining is, all right? Mansplaining is the tendency of a man to explain something to a woman in a condescending or patronizing way, assuming that she has no knowledge of what he's speaking about, right? So tell me, why do they tend to dominate a conversation or mansplain? That is for Pastor Griffith or Pastor Henry. Go ahead and jump on in.
Go ahead, Pastor. I would jump in after Pastor Griffith.
I like how Miss Bola anchored this thing. You know, that, and I have my echo. Yeah. I like the way she anchored it. And I think it's important for us to, like she said, understand the nature of men. And if we do not get to understand and accept the nature of men, I think the talking down to, the one-track mind, I heard somebody suggest it, these kind of things may be, I think, a narrow and unfair perspective to view the man. And I think that I therefore am not willing to say that in general men like to talk down or play down on women. And I've said it differently for myself, that I appreciate my Prime Minister who is a female, and I have no problem with female leadership. All right. But I think oftentimes men are not understood, and people keep imposing it. Let's face it, it comes from women. Women tend to want men to become like them, but that is unfair. And I think it is rather, we are rather complementary, right? And in the idea of sharing, of solving problems, that is how we are designed. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it a culture imposition? Is it innate? Is it instinctive? Is it? Somebody earlier was talking about communication, and they say that creating, and I'm quoting, creating effective messages require understanding differences in how genders communicate. Can't tell who said it, but some professional person said it. So in other words, however men communicate, it is clear that men communicate one way and women communicate another. It's also said that men in communication, men use data and aims to solve problems. In other words, they don't just use data, they're trained to solve the problems. And that is because of how men are. And somebody in speaking in context of work and communication and the different groups that are coming together in the workplace, the person actually suggested, I want to quote it now, but it suggests that the men have a role and the women have a role, and the different styles of communicating complement one another. I think we need to understand the complementary role of men and women, in this case men, and that men are so by nature, but we need not try to change men. I pause.
Dr. Neff, I think it's my turn.
Yes.
Yes, if you have something to add to it, yeah.
Yeah, gender communication styles are different. I quite agree with Sister Bola. I think as Pastor Griffith was saying, both genders must understand and accept the differences in communications. And they must understand that those differences in communication are similar to the differences in our physiological makeup. They are similar in the differences to our physiological makeup. And so the problem arises when a man wants to train a woman to communicate like him and vice versa. That is like training a woman to function with testicles and training a man to function with a womb. Is that difficult? I think what is necessary and the middle ground is that both parties must take the time to discover the language that each other speaks, be it emotional, social, or even Martian or even Venusian. And the objective of such a search should be to bridge the gender differences in communication and to get to the place where the listener has a better understanding of what the other is saying. Men, because of their orientation, and I don't think that is that we were born that way. I think it's because of our orientation over the ages, that the man has always been the one out there looking for the food, the hunter, what have you, and so on. That orientation has caused us to believe over that period, over a period of human existence, to believe that a woman must understand and comply with what is said, what the man says. Or in other words, I'm the leader, I am the one who gives the instructions, you follow. And so some of the questions that you ask, why do men talk down? Why do men behave in such a way in getting out information? That is something that has come down from generations, that being in that leadership position, being in that position where he is, as the scripture says, the stronger vessel, it leaves him in that position that, well, if you are following, I'm the leader and you are following, then do as I say, because, somehow I'm responsible here. What is strange, however, is that the modern woman's revolution is here. Whether we like it or not, it is here. The first gender revolution is here. And like all revolutions, this one has its goal to subdue the oppressor. And so men who have been seen as being the oppressor in communicating, in giving the commands over the years, this revolution, this female revolution, has its goal to subdue the oppressor, and at the same time, to make the vision of the revolution is the law. Even if it means that they themselves become the oppressor. And the cycle will continue. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I see there's been some chatter going on in the chat, some comments and emojis, and there was one question that the Henrys asked, but is it that they cannot change at all, or can they practice to be a bit more empathetic? And I think from the response we got so far from Sister Bola and even from the gentleman is that it's not about changing who they are. It's about understanding that they are different, that we are different, and understanding what those differences are. And I think when it comes to communication, it is important for us to understand the differences. Okay, this is how a man or my husband or my partner, my brother, communicates. Therefore, I need to, respond in this manner or try to understand what they're saying and not try to change them to how I communicate, because then you're trying to change them from being who they are. Okay. Okay, so keep chatting because you guys are responding to each other and so forth, so it's good. Pastor Henry, there's a problem with the YouTube stream. You may want to check on that first. All right, thank you. All right, let's.
Actually, somebody said it's not streaming. I'm going to put this, it's streaming, but I'm going to put it in the chat.
Okay. All right. So they can click on it.
Put the link in the chat.
Okay. All right, let's move on to relationships. Relationships. Another charged topic when it comes to males and the gender differences. In general, men are not socialized or encouraged to engage with their feelings. What impact, Pastor Griffith, what impact does that have on their development and their relationships? You know, I was reading an article recently that spoke about the 21 things that men want in relationships. And 6 of them really stood out to me. All right, so if you can give me your thoughts on that as well, Pastor Griffith. One is praise, you know, and the article went on to say that a man needs to feel approval, and by giving praise, he feels approval. The other one is hero. A man needs to feel that he's needed, you know, that hero complex. I need to be your hero. So I know that I'm your hero when I feel that you need me, right? I can come in, you know, and rescue you. The other one is respect. You need to demonstrate that trust in me. So I know that you respect me. This one kind of threw me for a loop a little bit. And it says that a man wants to feel that he can be vulnerable, that he is in a safe space to share his emotions or to express his emotions. And that vulnerability is not always found in relationships. Then he wants to be a partner. He wants to feel that he's engaged in a true partnership, not just a marriage, not just I'm your husband, but I want to be in a real partnership with my spouse, with my wife. This one, I want to hear the men's thoughts on this. A man needs to feel that he can be chastised by his mate, by his spouse, because that chastisement, even though he may act as though it's unwelcomed, it helps to ground him. It helps to ground him. And then, so, you know, I can't wait to hear your thoughts on these. And I'm going to start with you, Pastor Griffith, and then Pastor Henry, you can jump in after.
Look, whether you are a man or a woman, relationships are important to you. Whether you are male or female, you have feelings. The truth about it is that, yes, I remember coming up years ago, somebody said that when you see a man break down, especially in public, and cry, it's really humbling, right? It also can be embarrassing because men don't cry. Now, that in itself really is a problem, because if we don't express our deep feelings, we have a problem. Maybe my father had a problem like that, because when my father had something on his mind heavily, because he would drink beer after beer after beer. So I'm saying that, yes, there's no debate that men have feelings, and because he doesn't share them, we might want to ask ourselves the question, is this good? No, it cannot be good. And I would want to believe that, since we're talking about men, the only body left is women. I believe that women should be deliberate to see how they can, in fact, help men, or to understand what men are, in fact, feeling. Because there's no doubt that men, they talk with one another. All right? There's no doubt that men value relationships. CDC sometime did a report going back into 2008. And they said that suicide was the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. And for males, all right, the rate increased to about 26%. That is from 17.8 per 100,000 in 1999 to 22.4 per 100 in 2017. All right. Now, the fact is that women, on the other hand, their number moved from 4 in 100,000, all right, to 6.1. You understand what we're saying here? That men are not expressing themselves. Men don't seem as though they're able to communicate, but men are carrying loads. Men are carrying problems, and men are killing themselves. You know why? Because when we're not working, it causes stress. Because who wants a man who cannot support the family? Who wants that? Who, as a mother, wants to know that her children are in need and that he can't bring nothing? Maybe he ain't school, he ain't learn, I assume. Right? What are the things that you say to the man when he don't? So why is it that men are committing suicide? Why is it so high? Right? So my concern really is that men not expressing themselves does have an impact on relationships. Because if my spouse cannot understand me, if I cannot express myself to my spouse, or she can't understand where I'm at, then stress will come between us. And it'd be easy, I can drink, I don't drink, but men are gonna drink and then get more abusive. All right? So I'm saying, yes, not being able to express ourselves, it's not that we're not able, but it's the factors that come among us. We are soft, we are complaining, we won't go and do things. All these are in fact affecting us. So I pause. I don't know. I pause.
Pastor Henry?
I think men do express themselves.
Right.
Again, the way that they do, somehow it's not always understood. You see the guys when they play football, right? And they score a goal. And these guys are running and hugging up on another. In one video, sometime I was looking at a game and this guy somewhere in Europe kissing this guy, and I'm certain that he is not anything, but you know, so men do express themselves. Let's get that. And men do express themselves in public. Men do talk to others about their feelings. And there's one biblical passage that comes to mind to show what the differences are. And so you have a situation, and the story I'm thinking about is Amnon, Tamar, and Absalom. Amnon is lovesick for his sister. And somehow the laws do not allow him to be with his sister. Mm-hmm. And so it shows on his face. His advisor sees him and asks him, what is wrong? So he is expressing himself, but it takes somebody with some sort of an understanding to be able to read what is happening with you. You see, again, because sometimes we sort of put men in this stereotype, and he has to be like a woman. He has to talk what he feels. We feel that he's not expressing himself. But if you're a good student and you observe your man, you know when he is not you know when he's not up there, when something is wrong, and you could see it because he is expressing himself. He may not be verbal, but he's expressing himself. And so Absalom expressed himself. Tamar expressed herself when she was raped. The Bible says she tore off her clothes and she went in the street walking and bawling and screaming and what have you and so on. Natural woman's behavior. That happens to a man, you wouldn't have that. So it's not that he doesn't express himself. Absalom, on the other hand, he says to his sister, listen, don't bother about it. That's where the human mind, the male mind kicks in. He is starting to work out, how am I going to fix this? Right? Crying and stripping off your clothes and the emotions don't do anything. It doesn't, as far as a man is concerned, it doesn't do anything. So sometimes when you see a man at a funeral and you have the mourners and somehow he's just there and he seemed to be so uninterested, what is going through his mind? Why behave like that? I can't bring back the dead. I can't do anything. What can I do to make things going forward better? So he's thinking way down the road, just like Absalom. You've been raped. So screaming, bawling, what have you. Don't take it to heart. Don't bother about it. I will take care of it. And so that's where the danger comes in, when you now have bad emotions stored up in you and they're not expressed, because the anger grows in Absalom's heart. And when you pick up the narrative in the next verse, I mean, the scripture is written in such a way, you will think that, it's supposed to go and tell you something between, it's a man that is writing it. So he writes a piece and then he said 2 years later, Absalom throws a party and he invites his brother. And the intent, of course, is to make him pay for what he did to his sister. Right. So the bad part by not verbalizing what you feel at times is that the emotions, and as Pastor Griffith said, they can lead to other things that are detrimental. So when you think that the man is talking down, let me just recap. When you think the man is talking down, he's not necessarily talking down. He's probably seeing where you are at as a woman, or where somebody else is at, that they are not dealing with the situation logically. And so he's thinking about what to do with it. The problem in such a case is that if you don't if you don't come up with the proper solution, if you don't do the right thing to help you to heal, and of course, if he had followed the principle of forgiveness and forgiven his brother, he would have been healed. And so there is always an alternate, and those of us who are dealing with men, we have to be able to bring them to that place so that they can talk about what they're feeling and help them to see alternative solutions.
All right, let's go to the audience. I see Elizabeth posted, a lot of fathers tell their sons to suck it up, be a man, don't show emotions, don't cry. And unfortunately, that's true. And our boys have been socialized to bottle in their emotions. And as Pastor Griffith said, really to the detriment of all, because there comes a time when that emotion, that pent up emotion, like any volcano, would erupt. And when it erupts, it could erupt into violence. So it's important for us to encourage and to teach our boys how to express their emotions, that it's safe and it's okay to have emotions and to express them. And it does not take away from them growing up to be a man. Sister Boda says this creates the aggressive behavior. Absolutely, yes. I'm going to open up to the audience for questions. I see the Henrys have their hand up. Henrys, please unmute so we can hear your question.
Hi, good night. Thank you very much. My husband wants me to first of all say that he appreciates the introduction from Ms. Bola, and he thanks her very much for making those things clear. And then my question is, based on what Pastor Henry is saying, it sounds like the man's emotions is hidden beneath a hard facade And the woman has to somehow figure out what is really going down deep inside him. However, the woman is being told, if I ask you if what is wrong, just say what is wrong. Isn't that somewhat a double standard where communication is concerned? And then the lead-up question to that is, as a man gets older and he knows better and learns better and attends so much of your communication sessions in church, shouldn't he be doing better?
The truth is that, as I said in my opening piece, that it takes two people to try to work and understand each other. Somebody rightly said that you know, if you take a longer period to get married, a longer period of courtship, that marriage tends to work better. And the reason for that is that when you're coming together, that period of trying to understand each other can be like two rivers meeting at a point, and you could see all the collision and all of the corrosion and all of the energy that is coming together. But if you give time for those two rivers to merge and to flow, and you look at them downstream, you see them flowing in beautiful harmony, in togetherness. And the reason for that is because the two parties have given themselves the opportunity to flow into one another, to accept, and mind you, listen to my word, to accept each other as they are. Our problem is, and I think our big problem is trying to cause you to carry a womb as a man, and the man is trying to cause you or to make you carry a testicle as a woman, and it only creates more problems.
Look, whether you are a woman or man to man or opposites together, we don't always do the right things that encourage good relationships. You know, maybe we can disrespect one another, we can ignore one another. Those are things that can happen. And even though we are saying these things, we Pastor Henry spoke about the idea of stereotyping, and there's some danger about stereotyping. So yes, an individual may have a case, and I'm saying it's not limited to a sex, male or female, because it can be two females, it can be two males, that the same problem can exist, right? But if you talk about men in general as characteristics, like we are now stereotyping, generalizing, right? Or we have established that, and I hope we did, because we keep getting idea as though like men are saying that is how we is and we can't get better. We are saying just understand the way that we communicate. I feel if my wife is hurt, I feel her hurt. If my child die, and I had a child that died, and I feel it. You understand? My wife felt it. So we all feel it. My father said to me when my daughter died, my father said, I ain't worried about you. And I pulled back and I said, you're worried about me. Because he felt I'm gonna carry it. But even though I'm not mourning, but I feel if I sit down and talk and think about my child in that kind of way, it can break me down. But I keep finding the positive. So because I ain't do that, you feel that I ain't sensitive to you. Pastor, we made the point well. Are we not trying to make of a man, a woman out of a man and vice versa? No, I repeat, there are some individuals who have a problem, whether it's male or female, and we need to go past that. But let us understand the unique characteristics that make us human beings, and let us learn how we can complement each other. I pause.
Bola, you have any comments?
Yes, I am happy that the men are getting a chance to speak, because a lot of times we don't allow them to. So it's good. The communication problem is something that sometimes parents help to train. You know, they ask you a question and then still tell you to hush. Don't say anything. So how can you ask a question and then tell me, don't answer me, you know? If you ask me a question, then, you know, it encourages me to, so something happened and I'm asking what has happened and you're attempting to explain, because boys take a little longer, men take a little longer to put their thoughts into words because that's how they are made, right? So while women can put their words and their feelings together quickly, the man has to stop thinking in order to get his emotions together. He doesn't get the two of them together. So that's why sometimes we find men sound a little callous, like something happened, and they don't react the same time. But as Pastor Griffith says, you have to take time now to process what has just happened. So Pastor Henry gave the story of Tamar bawling going down the street. Now, Absalom did not bawl and go down the street, but he planned over a period of time how he was going to deal with that. And sometimes we encourage that. We say, don't cry about that. Don't talk about that. We don't allow them to process first, because men have to think about it first before they can come up with the feeling associated with the thoughts. Ladies are not like that. They think and feel the same time. So that's why as soon as you begin talking, they begin crying, because the thoughts and the feeling go together. So that's another thing that we have to understand, that men have to think it through first. It's a process. That's why sometimes when you ask them a question, they do not answer readily. It's like you have to give them a little time to think about it, and then they will come up with the answer. So that is something that I need to bring out as well. Ladies switch quickly, but men have to think it through before they can come up with an appropriate feeling. And I made a note here that we need to allow them to express the emotion. So don't say what you're crying for. Big men don't cry. Big men must bawl if they have to. You have a loss and you want to cry, it's okay to do that. Right? And the loss may not be a debt, it may be a job, it may be, you know, a broken relationship, whatever it is, men should be allowed. So my word here is allow the men to deal with the situation in that way. Otherwise, like Dr. Neff said, it stays there, it's boiling up, and eventually it will boil over into a very violent way, either to abuse or to be abused. So either you abuse yourself, and usually when men abuse themselves, they do it in a very violent way, because you could see the amount of emotion that was bottled up there. So now they just take it out on themselves, or they take it out on other persons first, and then they turn on themselves. And that is because we never allow them to deal with the emotions. So men under the microscope, please feel free to deal with your emotions. Sometimes you go to the wrong person. The person you're speaking to is not understanding what you are going through. And you say, man, forget that now. That will pass. No, it will not pass. It will not pass. It has to be processed for it to pass, right? So your child died and nobody's asking you how you doing, how you feeling, but they're asking your wife because it's her child, not yours. But they must ask you how you feeling. How do you feel about that? And allow the person to express the feeling. And please, I mean, persons who are listening, please let's not try to, what's the word I'm looking for? help the person explain their feeling. Allow the person to explain what they feel. So they feel badly, it's okay. They feel good, it's all right. And they can't express what they're feeling, that's okay too. But give them that space. I like how it's put here, safe space for expressing your emotions. Right? Pastor Griffith, that's you smiling.
I want to comment two things here. Now, one, I cry. I do cry. All right, that's one. But I'm looking at a chat here. I don't know if I can do that, doctor. Someone had a question I found about men's understanding or interpretation of respect. I can't, and what to my mind is coming out here. I have no doubt that some women really are disrespected and abused by men. But I also want to say the opposite is also true. All right. And so I, Joseph, believe I have no issue with respecting women. And I would like my wife to probably come and say, if she think I disrespect, I'd be shocked. Right? I think I give my wife great respect. I think I do. All right. And the other question JS is asking about single parents. And let us not get mixed up. I can say two things and stop talking here. I, Joseph Griffith, a male representing, from the time my children born, I never waited when they were sick to carry them to the doctor. I was always there. I've always been at the school with my children, buy clothes to my children. My boys would say, look, my father been there with me. I watched my neighbor here the other day. He has a little baby. She's about 1 year now, just past 1 year. And I see the way he's taking care of that baby. And I spent a few minutes last Sunday to encourage him. What am I saying? Is that there are some men who have been irresponsible, who are irresponsible. I watched on TV, just before I came in here, one of our church brothers on the radio and the PTA speaking about his school. That is a man. And I'm saying that there are men that are responsible. And I'll close. I've always said my children will never have snotty hair, snotty nose, and coffee foot begging for 5 cents. And anytime my boys, anytime anybody come and tell you that you is my brother, tell them there's imposters. I pause.
Dr. Neff,
Yes.
the question is from Trinidad. So living in Trinidad for a little while, probably I might be able to help a little bit more. Deputy Essential, the Village Ram, and a whole list of calypsos was sung to convey that idea. Our African heritage coming to the Caribbean, I think it was after 1809 or 1808 when the slave trade was abolished by Britain, especially in the Caribbean islands. The masters in wanting to continue to maintain slavery would take the strongest men on the farms and take them to impregnate the women like a stud center. And we have come to inherit that. Nobody told us anything. And so in Trinidad and Tobago, a number of young women find themselves in that particular situation where the guy comes in and he whispers love in their minds and they're thinking relationship communication again. They're thinking relationship, this person, we're going to have family. And as soon as the child is born, before the child is born, the guy is gone. And 2 years later, another guy comes by because now you have a child to care for, no father. And so this guy comes by and so he's bringing in something to help and what have you. And so you make the same mistake and he too is gone. That is typical. That is typical. And we have to accept, we have to recognize that many of our young women find themselves in that situation. Many, many, too many. And whereas I am not making excuses I am not blaming the women for this situation, but I am not blaming the men either, because that is how some of some of the men saw their fathers behaving, their brothers behaving, and so on. But the thing rests with us as Christian leaders, pastors, ministers, to help our young men in the Caribbean. I think we're going to come down to that a little later on. But I think that the onus rests on our shoulder to help our men to do better, to be better in that regard.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let's move on to the next section that talks about leadership. Leadership. We can all refer to the scripture that says that the man is the head of the home, and we can also refer to other leadership scriptures in the Bible. But here's a one that speaks to leadership in general. And I'm going to ask Pastor Henry to start to lead the conversation on this one. What do you think the reasons are for today's women outperforming men in almost every aspect of life, politics, education, social skills? It was a reverse 60 years ago. That was, it was reversed. But in today's society, women tend to be outleading or outperforming men.
I think one of the big problems is that privilege leads to complacency. So that for a number of years, parents would fight to get their boy children to secondary school and to college and to university, and girls were not so necessarily privileged. And the parent bought a piece of land, the girl would get married, so her husband would provide her with some sort of inheritance, the boys would get the house and the land. That has led to complacency. And I think that there are a number of things that we are seeing with women in leadership. I think Sally Helgeson has a book outside there entitled The Female Advantage, Women Ways of Leadership. And in that book, she provides some of the reasons why women outperforming men are as far as leadership is concerned. He says women leaders place a high value on relationships, and men place more, men in leadership, they are concerned about getting the job done. Oftentimes they don't care how it's done once it's done. Women, she says, have a bias for direct communication rather than following the chain of command. And so the woman boss would go down to the janitorial section to deal with the problem. The man, he is the boss and he doesn't have time for that. He doesn't understand, or let's say the woman more functions like the servant leader that Jesus talked about than the man. Ms. Helgeson also says women put themselves at the center of the people they lead. And I think Pastor Griffith spoke about the prime minister here in Barbados earlier, but to go to the polls twice and your opposing party doesn't get one seat at the polls, it shows exactly what we have been doing, how women lead in this particular area. They're there with their people. Eugenia Charles in Dominica showed us that kind of a leadership skill set also with the Dominicans years ago. Margaret Thatcher in England, and this is what is happening. That the empathy and the personal nature that women share with those whom they lead serve as a great advantage. Those people in turn support them, and women are comfortable with diversity, so they're skilled at integrating their personal lives and their lives at work rather than compartmentalizing. And so instead of separating and so on, the women knows how to multitask. I think Sister Bola addressed that. And I think that's one of the things that make women great leaders. What we men need to do is to see what the women are doing, and I think we know what we are supposed to do as leaders. I think the problem with us is the will to change. As Bell Hooks says, that we have the information, we have the skill set, we have the ability to do it, but somehow we are so set in our old ways that we do not have the will to change what we are doing, even though it means our demise or success. And so that's how I see it as far as men in leadership. We need to change. Nothing is wrong with us. We can lead. We have led for many years. But we need to change. We need to follow the model of Jesus and become servant leaders. And that would make us great leaders.
Thank you, Sister Bola. I like your thoughts on this. You need to unmute.
Okay. Yes, some years ago, you said like 60 years ago, when we had the war and the men were recruited to go out to fight, the ladies were left to fend for themselves and the children. So there was a role reversal. So they had to learn to work the lands, they had to learn to take care of the children, they had to, they had to become independent and fend for themselves. Unlike, as one of the pastors said, the boys went out to, they got education, and then the girls were just trained to be housewives and so on and so forth. But when the men were taken, the ladies had to reverse that role. And I think since after that, the women have just taken off. So they understood what it meant to be independent. They started fighting for their own rights, getting to school, getting an education, and just moving away from the menial jobs into more office-oriented things and so on. So I think because of that, more opportunities were made available for women to get these roles, and they never look back. What happened now is that the men got left behind, because I noticed somebody wrote in the chat about why it's so easy for men not to be fathers, because they just drop children and leave. And women realizing that I have 5, 6, 7 children, 8 children, 10 children, I have to get up and get to ensure that these children get all that they need. So the men who pulled themselves aside got left aside, and women are now able to manage, and so the men got left. I mean, we have good men out there who are standing up, who are looking after their children, who are ensuring that they do everything, but we also have those who just drop children for 5, 6, 10 women, and they feel very happy as the village ram to have many children running around, barefooted, hungry, can't go to school, and they feel very good about that. So I am saying that men, and I am not bashing you now, but I'm just making a reality statement, that when you pull away, then the ladies step up and do what you should have done. So we would like a role reversal here, that men who's supposed to be the leaders, who's supposed to be the caretakers, supposed to be the breadwinners, stand beside the women now as partners, and both of you work, both of you look after the children, both of you get schooling, both of you hand in hand, you move things along. So I would like to see a role reversal here, that men taking more of their responsibility. You see girls going to school, you see the boys sitting by the side of the road, cooking a pot, puffing a spliff, in the classroom while they're studying to give trouble and be disrespectful, and they have to send them home. Girls are trying to excel and so on. So that's something I would really like to see reversed. And I may have a little bias for the boys because I have 3 of my own, And I believe that I always tell them that they should be the leaders. So when they have their homes, they should be leading out. Their wives should be help meet to them, because that's how it was meant to be biblically, and not you step aside and just let the lady do all that is necessary. So I believe that is an area really under the microscope where men now should step up, and we should help our boys, our young men, to step up in the home. What are we teaching? Girls must do housework, as we say, and boys just go roaming. No, they should be taught the same things. That's helping them to be leaders, to be masculine, to take the softer side of them so that they can actually function much better than we just let them by, and in the end they end up not where we want them to be. So I am saying, for today's women outperforming men, that is a role reversal that men, you have to take back. You have to take that one back and walk with the men to let them know that God intended for you to lead. That's what your role is. And the women should be your helpmeet. They're walking alongside with you. So that's my submission.
I like that charge. So I hope the men are hearing that, and the women who are raising boys, take that charge to take back, that leadership role in the family, so that we can really be better aligned with God's word. Thank you, panelists. Let's move on to the next segment. I checked the chat. Maria said, well said, Sister Bola. All right, well said. Elizabeth says, well said as well. All right, let's move on to the last segment. And I'm going to ask the audience to get your questions together. You will have time to ask questions. And I'm still looking in the chat, and I'm looking for raised hands in your windows so we can call on you. And this question, again, it goes to Pastor Henry, and then Pastor Griffith, I'd like you to follow up. Every society, every ethnic group and culture has expectations for their men. What does the Caribbean society expect of men, and how do these expectations measure up or compare with God's design for men? What does the Caribbean society expect of men, and how do these expectations measure up or compare with what God's design for men?
I'm not quite sure. I'm gonna try. Our past, I think if we are going to look at our future, we have to look at our past. Some time ago, I did a paper on the self-esteem of the Caribbean male, and my research led me to realize that we were back in 2000, I think it was in 2015 I did that. It showed that we were in a bad state. And so slavery and a number of other things has left us with damaged self-esteem. The whole idea of Christianity over the years, we haven't looked much at that. We haven't looked, taken in-depth studies into that. Once we had a period when we were fighting and striving to get out of it, to do something better. It was a part of our society. We were working hard to prove that we were of worth and we were people of value. Sadly, within recent times, it seems as though the materialism has caused us to go back to that level of mediocrity, that we seem to be settled for our mediocre performance as men. And a typical example is our cricket team at present. somebody from Trinidad said that there was this little boy who wanted to live with the West Indies cricket team. And so badly wanted the magistrate to take him from his abusive parents to put him to live with the West Indies cricket team. And only to discover that the reason why he made that request is because the West Indies don't beat anybody. That's where we are. And you get up there and you listen to every match summary after these guys have played a match. We will do better next time. Well, you know, we're trying, and this was a good game. You lost, but it was a good game. So you see that in the society, and that to some great extent is affecting our young men. And we have to go back to Sunday school. We have to go back to those evening classes when we would take our children and start to give them lessons and say, this is what is going to help you. We have to go back to those little things instead of the television and the telephone, not the telephone, the cell phone, and all of these other gadgets that we are just putting into the hands of children. A lot of information, but they do not know how to use the information. And so the society on a whole, I'm not sure how much it expects of men, we talk about the education system just now, and some years ago I was parked in a car in Macau waiting for someone just in front of one of these tertiary institutions. And after a while, I mean, I saw so many women going into the building. And so I decided, well, let me count and see how many women would go in relation to men. And would you believe that I counted 100 people? There were 4 men and 96 women. So that's where we are. And so the society itself, it's, you know, when I was younger, I mean, as I said earlier, our parents expected the boys to perform. You expected the boys to become the doctor and the lawyer and what have you. We need to do that again. And I think one of the problems that has caused all of this is the value system that has been developed in the Caribbean society. Again, the drug trade. You have a young guy who doesn't make it in school, doesn't care to make it in school because he can drive from Carnash to Arima and somebody puts $10,000 in his hand. A few trips like that, he could walk into one of the stores, buy a car, and he is drawing a lot more money than the guy who sat down in the class there and working really hard to get a job in the government or to become a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. And so we have to reestablish values for our young people again. I think that is where we need to start, reestablish values. And parents, you know, it may mean starting over, that we probably have to give up one generation and say, this is lost. We can't do much here again. We have to consider this one loss. But from this period onward, every child that is born, this is what we are going to do. Every male child, we're going to make sure that he has a good sense of self-esteem. He has a proper sense of values. And so that we can build a better generation for the one to come, the one that is coming.
Pastor Griffith, please unmute.
Expectations. How to start? Tonight, I can say that I heard coming from the audience that they want men to be more caring for the families. I know they talk about children, but I think they really mean more caring for the families. I think I also heard that they want men to respect their partners, or maybe extend to women too. And I also think I'm deducing that they also want men not to be lay persons, or in other words, to get up and be men, meaning to take responsibility, go out, earn, you know what I mean, be a good mentor, etc., etc. But we have not been able to convince. You have not been able to convince me yet that over time the men have become uneducated. I mean, capacity is right. They have lost their educational capacity, intellectual capacity. I don't know that they have lost that. I have not seen any research to say they've done so. And if they've done so, it must be maybe evolutionary. All right. But I don't know that it is. But I've listened to my boys talking, and there are reflecting other men that are talking. And I think that the time has come for some serious objective study to understand why are men simply not, I think the word is really motivated. Men are actually demotivated, and it's not about capacity. I think to see the word or to say they're careless, to say they're irresponsible misses the point. And I think that serious work need to go into find out why men are demotivated. And I am certain that listening to what the women are saying and what I'm observing, it is not that I told the men don't want to do. The issue is that they are not motivated, right? I can't talk to one on that. And let me go back to quickly. When we look at the women who are in leadership position, it'd be interesting if we do analysis about these women and that are fully leading, as in government and what's not, and see if they are typical of women. Find out that. Tell me if they're typical. All right. And tell me if, as women, that we are in fact saying that we are satisfied that the men are demotivated. My word. Are we really satisfied? And is that what we really want? Let me say a caution. Let me say a caution. In the Bible, when the children of Israel were enslaved, the first thing Pharaoh did was to ask to destroy the men. When there's war, you take the men, you kill them, or do whatever. But you take the women, they clean your house, they wash your clothes, and they are your bed partners. All right? And you can influence your culture. And I'm saying that what Pharaoh sought to do was to destroy the men, and he knew it. And I'm saying it is still a philosophy that is still happening. I'll close by saying that if you look, there's a story I saw a long time ago about the women from Amazon, how they thought they can live without men. But the story, obviously, ended. All right. And I repeat, the word is demotivated. Why is our men demotivated? And we must urgently address the matter of why they're demotivated. The Bible says the man is the head of the woman. And that does not talk about bossing and disrespecting, because the Bible says, husband, love your wife, just as Christ loved the church. So the issue is, men, you be leaders. And I simply say that we need to pause and ask ourselves, what is it that we are expecting of men? Is it reasonable? And what can we do to help men to be men? I pause.
Okay, I want I was quickly trying to look for some clarification, because maybe Pastor Henry, you can answer it without me trying to find it. Pastor Griffith said the Bible said the man is the head of the woman. Is that what it says, or does it say it's the head of the home?
I think
everyone was man. The head of everyone's man is clear.
Yeah, I think it's Corinthians, but then one needs to understand that within the context in which it was spoken.
Right.
And I don't think we're in for theology class this evening, are we?
No, we're not. We're not. But the reason I asked that question is because it does say home in the Old Testament, and it does say woman in the New. And I just want to make sure that people don't walk away thinking that one is wrong and it's the other. I just want them to know that they're both correct. Okay. All right. No theology class. That's great.
So that the whole thing is that if you're going to be the head, as Jesus said, you have to learn to wash the feet.
Yeah.
Right. So that in those days, the head of the house would have servants to wash the guests' feet.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus said, listen, this is how the Gentiles, the kings of this world operate. You are not to be like that.
Right.
This is how I'm teaching you. I'm the head of this group, but I'm going to wash your feet. So I'm going to do the most menial tasks in leading you.
Servant leadership. Thank you.
Yes.
In the chat, it says, a man should not expect or require behavior from his family that he is not choosing himself. When men fail, it's like the foundation fails. It's only when the man fails that the woman, out of necessity, assumes the leadership role. Any comments on that? And I know Sister Bola spoke about back in wartime when women stepped up, not only in the home, but also in society to keep things running while men were away at war. And that was not an issue of them failing. It was more an issue of men were sent to war, and these positions in society needed to be filled so that society could continue to work, to progress. So any comments on that statement?
It is true that to some extent that the women are stepping up to the plate, and women still expect men, they still have that expectation of men to, you understand, to fulfill their roles as men. Pastor Griffith spoke about the motivation. The problem is not, I don't think the problem so much is the motivation. The problem is that men are not motivated in the right direction. That's the problem. They are motivated. And so the young guy today, he goes out and, you know, he studies, he gets a job, and he wants to look like, you know, his job is to make him look like Hollywood. And so he wants the best car. He wants to live in a particular area. And with that kind of a materialistic motivation, he is going to get the temptation. And so instead of becoming the leader in the bank or wherever, he's in prison. That is what is happening. And the motivation why women are where they are is that they're the ones who are left with the children. I can't do this. I cannot go to jail for my children. I can't. And so they have something, again, it's that whole idea of family, that if we could understand, if the man in the Caribbean could understand, this is not about having children, it's about family. It's you and it's me and these little ones that we come together to make something and to make a life better here on earth for these little ones that we are leaving behind. If we could get men to go back to that fundamental thing that was there with our fathers back in the 50s and the 60s, it'll be different. But now the problem, the motivation is about looking good. It's about faking it until you make it. And fakes do end up where they belong.
Yes, that's right. How about we faith it, F-A-I-T-H, it until
That's
we
right.
make it. All right, I like what Pastor
right.
Griffith says in the chat. He says it is a leadership role, the caring, the protection. You know, oftentimes you hear a leadership role and you think, well, that's the boss, the person who's telling everybody what to do, where to go, you know, and how to do it. But leadership involves caring and protecting and you know, nurturing. All that's part of leadership. He says it is not incidental that men have beard, deep voices, muscles. This is true of animals. It is a role of testosterone to be defensive, the defense mechanism in men. He said, my son did electrical engineering, but he complains that there is a brainwashing going on at universities. a lot of ideology is being pushed, and we're not going to go down that rabbit hole today, but you know, I think I really like the leadership part and the fact that that leadership involves more than dictating and ordering and directing and controlling. Leadership involves caring and nurturing, protecting, making sure that you're building teams, you know, making sure that you're working as a family, as a group, you know, as a unit, as the Bible expects us to. All right, it is just about that time, enough time for us to get the closing remarks from our panelists. And again, participants, if you have questions, go ahead and put it in there. I'll be watching the chat while the panelists give their final closing remarks. I will make sure and keep an eye on what you're writing as well. Sister Bola?
Yes. So I would, as a good teacher, I would like to summarize my points tonight on men under the microscope. We have looked at them very carefully. We have seen some of the areas that we think that they need to be refocused on: communication, relationship, leadership, and expectations. These are areas that we think men need to pay some attention to. We spoke about men using more of the left side of the brain that makes them more technical and logical and so on. But we do have to teach them to use that right side of the brain, as Pastor Griffith put there, the caring and the protecting and the, you know, the lighter side of things, being able to smile some more, because you notice they always have a very stern look. The controlling, directing, you know, can be toned down with some of the other areas of the other side of the brain that make them more nurturing. And because women were made to be nurturers, that's why we are made the way we are. And men were made to, you know, be the protectors and the leaders and so on. But the question earlier that somebody asked about, can they learn? Yes, they can learn, but we have to teach them that. So when we say boys can cry, boys can feel pain, boys can feel hurt, boys can react to their losses and so on, and it doesn't have to be in an aggressive way, then we are teaching them what true manhood is. Being able to help with the children. I like to see the men going down with the baby on their shoulder and the mother have the bag. Before, it used to be the next way. The men have the bag and the ladies have the children. But now we're seeing more men carrying the babies, pushing them in a stroller, or they have those little pouches that they put them, you know, to the front of the stomach, and they're taking them. I like to see that. And that doesn't take away from the man being the leader. Doesn't take away from him being the protector, the provider. What it does is just create that partnership between the two sexes. So one is softer, one is rougher, should we say? But when they come together, they balance off very nicely. So I would like our men to consider all that was said tonight, and our ladies who have been listening, help our men to take on that leadership role that will help to push them in the direction that God wants them to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Bola. Pastor Griffith?
There are a lot of responsible men out there who want to do good and who are doing good. My father left something to me. He said, I'm going to make sure God does not charge me for none of you. And I believe that I am doing the best I can to make sure that my boys also learn. They learn by the way I treat their mother, and I will not tolerate them disrespecting their mother in no way, to the extent, and I will say this to you, that I put it even in white, right in black and white, that if I die, and my children disrespect their mother in any way, a stranger can go court and disinherit them. Sorry, it's my will, right? So I believe that a lot of men out there really want to do good, and it's important for the health of our families, the health for women, the health of societies, that we do not lose our men. And we need to be deliberate, men and women, to make sure that we do not lose our men, or that our men get motivated, as Henry say, for the right things. But I think there's hope only if we will understand what we are in fact doing. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pastor Griffith. Pastor Henry?
What can I say? I don't know how much I may have contributed as a father, as a parent. I don't know how much that contribution may have made towards my children's development. I always felt and still do feel that I could have done a lot more. But it's what I had to work with. And I'm hoping that the little information that I pass on to my children and to those to whom I'm called to serve, that would help our society to become even better, our men to become stronger. Yes, we are different. We will not respond like the opposite sex. And that doesn't mean we do not care, we do not feel. Late last year, my mother-in-law passed away. We had been living together for just over 12 years, and we had grown very close with one another. I understood her in a lot of ways, and I think she understood me. And when she passed, I was here. I called who I had to call and what have you. And I was preparing my mind because she was sick. And so for weeks, I was preparing my mind for the moment. And the emotions got the better of me when the undertakers came to take her out of the house. And what I did as a man, I went to a room, locked the door, and spent the time there. Because I couldn't. That's what I was told. That's how I know men operate. So it's not that we don't have emotions. We don't necessarily show them publicly. And I don't think you want us to show them publicly either, because there are times when you start to quarrel with me, I could put my hand on my waist and give you some good words too, but I don't think you would appreciate me as being a man doing that. So we men, we do have our moments, and if we seek to understand one another, support each other, and to build our families, I think we'll be better off. And that's what we're trying to do at Real Talk Family Life, building shatterproof families, one brick at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Henry. Sister Bola started the conversation giving information on left brain, right brain. And those of you who've studied the brain or have heard it before know that men do have a left and a right brain. She said that, right? Mm-hmm. It's just that they function more on the left. However, the right is there and it's intact. So now we have to teach and train men and boys how to utilize that part of their brain. That it's okay and when to use it and how to use it, so that they can begin to use their whole brain to address some of these issues, whether it's communication, leadership, relationships or expectations. If they are trained in how to utilize the whole brain and work with their spouses, for those who are married, you would be amazed at what a wonderful blending that would be, and they will begin to raise children that are whole brain children, not just left brain or right brain, because again, God gave us a whole brain. We've just been socialized to use the part that is stronger, right? But we have all of it. So I think if we understand, first of all, that we are different, that we utilize our skills and our abilities differently, but we also understand that we have the ability and the aptitude to utilize the other side, and perhaps with some patience and guidance and some assistance and being a good helpmeet, we can help each other to utilize that whole brain, so that we can, become all that we can be. I'm looking at the chat, and Brother Benjamin says he works at a private university, and it's correct that there are more women in universities than men. It seems as though strong single mothers are raising their daughters to be go-getters, and the boys are being cuddled and ever so often not guided to be real men. I can give you the answer to that, because a woman cannot raise a boy to be a man. Okay, so that's part of the issue there. However, cuddling a boy is not helpful to him. You're doing a disadvantage to a boy if you cuddle him and not allow him to develop with his God-given talents. It also says that not guided to be real men as God intended. It is really time to refocus our values and transmit them to our communities. And then Maria says, perhaps
to start the formula.
I don't know who's talking. Maria said, perhaps we can have a part 2. We've looked at men under a microscope. I would like for us to see them through the lens of their children. My observation that the impact of their left, Henry, could you find that? The impact of their left brain thinking is affecting is affecting our children. And that's a really critical point. I found it. That's a real critical point, because our children are impacted and we are perpetuating the same thing. We're not helping to break those cycles, and it's time for us to break that cycle and to help our children.
My phone lights up when it's on silent.
I would also suggest, Sister Maria, that we have the other part 2. Maybe that's a part 3, but part 2, we also need to do women under a microscope, because we want to make sure that we look at both genders so we can better understand each other. So indeed, let's see. Remember, women also have 2 sides. Yes, women have 2 sides of the brain as well. Yes. And I'll tell you what, if you look at the brain scans, you'll see that women are using both sides of their brain all the time, all day long. When men is using his side of the brain that he uses, the brain scan shows that the other side is dormant, it's asleep, right? And when you look at the female brain scans, she is constantly using both sides of her brain. We just have to train our boys to do the same. All right, thank you guys so much for listening tonight. Thank you for the questions, the comments. If you have questions, please, you can always still send them to Pastor Henry, who is our host pastor for Real Talk Family Life. And we look forward to seeing you at our next session. Pastor Henry, could you give us the title of the next one, which is in 2 weeks?
Yes, it's Man Under the Microscope, and it is about man, the image of God. So we are continuing on with the same theme, but we are looking at as man, the man that God designed and wants us to become.
All right. We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks from tonight, and we pray that you will continue to invite your friends and family members and whoever else you'd like to invite to come and have this conversation with us. All right. Thank you all for being here. Pastor Henry, you can